Yes, thank you very much, Ken Sutcliffe. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Surfers Paradise. As you can see, the Trans Am cars take to the racetrack for their warm-up lap, and a start now not too far away. Bradley Jones joins me. These cars representing brute horsepower.
Well, that's true, David. I mean, the rules for these... Oh, almost had an accident there with that car swerving all over the track. The rules for these are very loose. You basically got a tyre size, engines are free, wings have to fit in a diameter box, but, you know, you can basically do what you want them. So it's a, you know, high bird category.
It certainly is. There's more freedom in terms of the specifications with these cars than most others. We can see there Keith Carling, who hails from Dubbo in New South Wales, on pole, a 1:56.16, which is well within inside John Bow's qualifying time, for example, in the Group A cars. Briggs on the outside of the front row. They're two certainly to watch. Mick Monterosso coming out of the inside of position 3 there, or grid 3, I beg your pardon. And he's a guy that can get off the line very, very quickly. A big field of cars and all manufacturers on display, Brad. One of the good things about the Trans Am category is the fact that we've really got everything represented. And certainly the Chevrolet engine is the most popular manufacturer.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, the body shapes vary, and some of them, like the Toyota Supra, for example, is slightly difficult to recognise it compared to the road one. But, you know, Chev's a very popular engine to have in this category, and, you know, it does a great job. I mean, there's a few Porsches in there and a few other things, a couple of Fords. But by and large, there's one of the old Benson Hedges Group A cars just going by. It's a good category.
Yes, plenty of excitement coming your way from the Trans Ams. And when we say Trans Ams, don't take that literally, because there really is a variety of race cars out there. But Keith Carling and John Briggs in the Nissan 300ZX and Honda Prelude have been the pace setters here right throughout the weekend. Keith Carling from New South Wales, Dubbo in fact, in the V6 twin turbo Nissan 300ZX, qualifying with a 1:56.1. Then it was John Briggs in the Chevrolet powered Honda Prelude, probably the lightest car out there, under 900 kilograms I understand, qualified with a 1:56.3. So they are certainly the two men on the pace, and there they are on screen forming up behind the pace car. Bright yellow machine of Keith Carling, one of the mainstays of sports sedan racing throughout this country for a long time.
And a beautiful car, well constructed when you have a look at it. So is the Honda. They're very well made, and getting ready for a start here now. They're all lining up behind the pace car.
A 10-lap journey, 45 kilometres around the streets of Surfers Paradise. The top bunch of cars here will exceed 270 kilometres per hour as they come down the Gold Coast Highway. Watch for Des Wall, car number 26, starting from position 3 inside second row. Plenty of experience in, of course, the Chevrolet-powered Toyota Supra, but plenty of horsepower coming from the Trans Ams. We're not far off the start now. Pace car off the circuit, and it will certainly be stacks on the mill as they head towards the first chicane. Green flag on display, and the horsepower unwinding here down the Gold Coast Highway. And look at the horsepower of Keith Carling in the Nissan 300ZX. Stole a very big gap on the rest of the field, gets through there safely. Let's watch some of the other cars as they negotiate the first chicane. They'll be using plenty of the racetrack. They're all choosing to get through there sensibly, and that's good news indeed, Brad.
Well, the last thing you need to do is in the first corner. You know, bottlenecks a joint, no one can get by, and they're all using common sense here. There's no locking of the brakes.
So not surprisingly, Keith Carling jumps out, leads the field, qualified on pole, has been the form man. John Briggs smartly up into second spot, qualified second fastest. He's a Queenslander. 6-litre Chevrolet power plant. These cars producing in excess of 600 horsepower. Make that 700. Carling makes a mistake. That then enables, obviously, John Briggs to make a move up on the inside. Plenty of horsepower. Got it down onto the racetrack. Wasn't really any wheel spin there, so obviously a good selection. And we can see the ex-Benson Hedges BMW car at the back of the pack. There it is now on screen, getting into all kinds of bother. Settling down, though, there.
Well, I'd say what's happened is for Keith's car, maybe the tyres are a little bit cold, and he's got the thing off the boost, turned in a little bit late, and of course with the Chev you've got the throttle response there the minute you want it, and he's jumped on that thing and gone straight past the Nissan, but Keith's caught back up with the Nissan now. He's all over him.
John Briggs, the race leader, very much under siege from Keith Carling, who's not going to take that lying down. Made a mistake, it cost him the race lead, but he's going to fight back. Make no mistake about that. And listen to the horsepower being generated by these race cars. Brian Smith I just saw moving up very quickly also in the Alfetta GTV. He's been carrying all before him in the Australian Sports Sedan Championship. In fact, one of the 2 heats these cars took part in at this event last year.
Brian Smith all over Des Wall there. He's he's looking to press on and get up towards the front. There's very little between all these cars at the moment.
Yeah, they're running fairly close together on the racetrack, leaning on one another, door handle to door handle racing. Some of the slower cars now starting to spread out. There hasn't been any major incidents so far, and that's good news. Race leader settling down, though. John Briggs into a nice pace, generating, in fact, his last recorded lap was 2:03, so they are really quite slow compared to their qualifying times. That's surprising just how slow, in fact, because they haven't faced any slower traffic so far in front of them.
If I remember correctly, that last year they're tending to run out of brakes towards the end of the race up here because these cars aren't, a little like NASCAR. They're not built to stop so hard. So I'd say they're all, just being a little cautious and making sure that they're there in the end because, of course, you've got to win, don't you?
Jeff Barnes in the Chevy Monza is up running third behind Keith Carling. There's the gap from first to second, then back to third. On the back straight now, the big side of the racetrack. Been fairly blustery conditions here throughout the day. There were some spots of rain a couple of hours ago, but that's gone away, thank goodness. These cars would be nightmares to try and negotiate this 4.5 kilometre venue in. But Briggs doing a nice job. They're using plenty of the racetrack. There's Smith going through in the Alfetta. He'll be looking forward to improve from there.
Look there, we just missed it in the background. The guy in the Porsche just turning that thing around there in the chicane, so we'll have a look off the track.
Good battle now developing. You can see Barnes in third spot, moving up behind Keith Carling. That could very much develop into a memorable scrap over the next couple of laps. This obviously being a 10-lap race. And still we see John Briggs leading the event fairly comfortably. Keith Carling is still in second spot, followed by Jeff Barnes. They are the top three. You're looking at the race leader now. Carling, I guess, would be a good 20 or 30 metres behind him, further back in second spot. No real change in the order, but certainly Smith and Wall are charging, as indeed is Barnes behind Keith Carling. There's Smith now taking onto the back of Barnes' machine, the Chevrolet Alfetta GTV, the red machine, all the way from Western Australia. One of the real powerhouse performers in this category.
He's moved up a couple of positions already from the start. He started out of 6, and I'd say, the way he's closing on Barnes there, he's about to gather another position up, and he's running a very smart race. He's just, pressing on when he needs to. They're only 3 laps into it, and I'm sure he's going to be there as well.
When they come down the main straight, the Gold Coast Highway here, at around 270 kilometres per hour, the foundations rock on the main straight. Our broadcast box on the start-finish line gets a little on the shaky side. Watching now Barnes under heavy pressure from obviously Smith, who pulls up on the inside trying to find a way through. Decided not to go on with it there. That was pretty smart thinking on his behalf. Barnes currently third on the racetrack behind Briggs and Carling. But this Smith, all the way from Western Australia, a company director, loves his motor racing, a real fighter. And that's not the last time you're going to see him try and attack the back of Barnes' machine. Race leader though, Briggs. Next through then is Carling. Here comes Smith down on the inside. Couldn't do it that time. Again, Barnes slams the door shut in his face. He's going to have to try and find another way through. And obviously Briggs continues to lead this one. We'll take a break from surface. Look forward to your company on the other side of that. Welcome back to Surfers Paradise. 4 laps now gone in this Trans Am event, and it's been all happening. The man that was leading the event, John Briggs, has now fallen back to about 3rd or 4th spot on the racetrack. Also Keith Carling, who you saw in the Nissan running second, made a mistake, crashed into the wall. As a result, now we see this fascinating battle. Barnes was the race leader. No, he's not. Not for too much longer. Peter Brock, who now joins me, because Mr. Smith, Brian Smith, all the way from WA, storms through, and now also Barnes under pressure from, of course, Kerry Bailey.
Yes, Kerry Bailey's got, that's the inside running. I can tell you that's the right line into that bit. I don't know, there seems to be a bit of toing and froing going on here with cars that have got the power and they seem to just fall by the wayside. But Smithy, we've seen him here last year, ran extremely well. He's from Western Australia, a beautiful little Alpha, big Chevy engine. And this guy's a hot runner, there's no doubt about that. He's usually, I don't know why he didn't have pole, but look at that, he's just drawing away.
Yeah, doing a fantastic job. Seized the opportunity. There's a replay. Major problem there for car number 18. Getting it all out of shape on the racetrack, and the other guys managed to get through fairly safely. It's been one of those motor races, had a little bit of everything so far, and I dare say that will continue as the remaining laps unfold.
Joe Riccardio and his beautiful little Alfetta, same sort of body shape as Smithy's, but one there mentioned, I suppose, that Smithy's is probably more highly developed.
Chevrolet power plant producing around 700 horsepower, perhaps a little bit less Lots of freedom in the specifications of these cars. You can run whatever suspension you like. And as far as the minimum weight requirement is concerned, well, it's easy. There is none. You can see there Smith. He's got the right hand out of the window. Fairly annoyed with the guy in front of him. Obviously in the Porsche, that's Rick Scarf in the RS Carrera Porsche.
He can't pass.
Hand out of the window. Yellow flags on display. It's now time. Welcome back to the streets of Surfers Paradise and this Trans Am event. Driver on screen, car number 26. Des Wall, currently running in fourth on the racetrack. We now take vision from his machine. And Brocky, he's got a fair bit of work to do because he's quite a long way behind the leading trio comprising Brian Smith, our race leader, Kerry Bailey, and of course Barnes, who's in third.
You can see as the car gets through a certain resonant frequency there, you can see the old camera flapping. Look at that bonnet jumping up and down too. Of course, these, hello, we've mozzed him, He won't get out of there. He won't get out there in a hurry. That's the kitty litter, I mean, tell you what. And a beautiful little car. I mean, the most magnificent paint scheme.
Trying too hard, Peter. How did you see that? Just a case of getting in a bit late.
Outbraked himself, as they say in the classics. He came in there and figured he was going to go another 50 metres deeper. But, I mean, we might be doing a disservice for him. But looking at that, yes, he's just locked up the rears. It really did seem like the brake balance wasn't all that flash. And perhaps this track was a little bit testing on the circuit, testing on the braking system, and showed up a little fault. But Smithy back in front there again. He's looking pretty good.
We've got a fairly good motor race on our hands, though, because the reigning Australian Sports Sedan champion, in fact, the man that's won it back-to-back, Kerry Bailey, all the way from Tasmania, now starting to close the gap fairly quickly. Running in third spot still on the circuit is Jeff Barnes. And he's going to need a little bit of luck from there to catch up with these leading two guys. Having said that, he's not too far off the pace. They're all circulating around the mid-58s, 158s, 59s. So the leading trio are certainly on the pace.
Yeah, they're not going too badly at all. In fact, that's a little faster than what Smith qualified at. As I mentioned, hello, here we go. You can see this again. And they got right, missed apex. He was obviously going about 20k too fast there.
Obviously, these guys do have the opportunity to wind brake bias if required.
You can do, and well, of course, we don't know the sophistication of that particular car, but yes, it's a fairly common system. It's not exactly what you expect in your normal road cars, but we do it quite often. In fact, the last 22 lapper, I gave a small twiddle as we started with a full fuel load, and as the fuel comes off, of course, you can adjust the brakes to suit. But Smithy unleashing the big Chevy down the straight.
He certainly is. I mentioned a couple of moments ago that the man in second spot, Kerry Bailey, is closing the gap. There's no doubt about that. Looking at the timing monitor in our broadcast box, still we see Des Wall stranded on the racetrack. That's the race leader now, Brian Smith, going through. Also the Nissan of Keith Carling parked beside the racetrack. He was running second earlier on, but in fact the man in second spot, Bailey, is lapping just a little bit quicker than the race leader. We can see there, obviously getting plenty of drive out of the corners, that Chevrolet Toyota Supra of Bailey, really coming on very strong now in the latter stages, closing right up on Brian Smith there under brakes. They take Coca-Cola corner, A&A as we call it here. A short sprint down to another fairly, oh, there it goes, another one sideways, the little Escort all out of shape and a dangerous spot to be parked. The crowd are enjoying it.
They love it. It's a little old Ford Capri. Look at it, eh? They're a dear little old thing, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are. A real good scrap go. In the meantime, race leaders starting to bunch up. We've seen plenty of mayhem in this one. Plenty of race cars rocketing off the circuit in one way or another.
Some pressure now really being applied there to Brian Smith.
Obviously, the slower traffic now, Brocky, could help decide things one way or another.
It'll come into play, I've got no doubt about that. I noticed that Brian Smith flows are interesting lap times. He qualified at 58.9, which isn't all that thrilling a lap time, but he's down into 57.3 his last lap. So it gives you an idea that the boys, they've got cranked up now under the pressure of competition.
Yeah, he's got it sorted out. In fact, he was very fast here early in qualifying, and then yesterday when it really counted, couldn't get it together. Talking about getting it together, that's what Kerry Bailey's doing in second spot. You're watching the battle for first and second. That beautifully turned out Toyota Supra powered by a Chevrolet engine chases the little Alfetta GTV.
And something I'm just noticing here too, David, is that Brian Smith is now starting to take a defensive line in some of these tighter corners. And you notice Barnes is now really closing the gap because it slows them all down.
It certainly does, whilst obviously Bailey and Smith are scrapping for the front. That's going to enable Barnes to perhaps get on equal terms with them. Back down the straight they come. Big speeds from these cars. And a pretty tricky part of the racetrack here, Peter, from a driver's point of view. It must be very challenging to time the braking perfectly through there.
Yes, it is. You really, in fact, I was floating the thing across that curb, just letting it sort of float in there under brakes, and gee, it is a difficult bit of road.
2 laps now remaining in this 10-lap journey, and still the West Aussie driver, Brian Smith. leads them. I wouldn't say he's doing it that comfortably. He gets away in certain areas of this circuit, but Kerry Bailey seems to have plenty of drive out of the corners. The car squats. That's the man in second spot. A good example there. Gets on it, and the car literally jumps away, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks to me as if Brian's perhaps driving, looking in the mirror a little. It's a tendency. It's quite easy to have around a track like this because there's so many passing spots. You can go into those right angle corners and just put the car there and just aggressively sort of force your way through. Brian's very aware of this.
They're down on the back straight now. What's the grip been like on that section of the circuit, given the fact that we've had blustery conditions, no sand and grit blowing up on the racetrack?
Look, I ran that entire 22-lap race a little while ago at the same lap times that I qualified at. We ran a 1:58 the whole race, so I thought the track was in very good condition.
That's been the popular opinion by most drivers this weekend. The organisers here at Surfers Paradise work tirelessly throughout the year trying to, striving for improvements. And still a very good race here. Not all over bar the shouting. No way in the world. Never till the checkered flag's on display. And obviously our race leader, Brian Smith, would be well aware of that fact. He's trying to keep it together. He doesn't want to make any unforced errors because Bailey will seize the opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great shot, that last one. You could see the relative speeds of the cars in that tight sections. And I think Bailey's a little bit faster in the tighter stuff. And certainly the Alpha's got some mumbo down the straight. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, he needs to get closer, though, as they get onto this main straight. Smith getting away momentarily. Across the line. This is the last lap now for the Transams, in this case the Alfetta. Under siege from the Toyota Supra. Chevy power plant of Kerry Bailey, back-to-back national sports sedan champion. Barnes is certainly not out of this one either. The three of them are pretty tightly packed on the circuit. But obviously Bailey just needs a little bit of luck. He needs obviously the race leader to slip up somewhere.
And you see a yellow flag being waved back there before. Now, of course, Brian Smith knows this. It gives him a small respite. He knows that you can't pass under a yellow, but Bailey wants to get as close as he can. So he's taken a very, very conservative line into that corner. But
nice job.
It's a nice little gap, actually.
Oh, for sure. Kerry Bailey in second spot. You're watching him still in third. Jeff Barnes. There's been no change in the order, I guess, for the last 3 or 4 laps. A race of uncertainties, though. There's been plenty go wrong for some of the fancy drivers, including our early leader Briggs. Obviously, Carling fell by the wayside. But you are watching Brian Smith, the West Aussie driver, keeping it all together. He'd be happy with this. Well aware of the fact that Bailey is right up his clacker, though, as they negotiate the 4.5 kilometre Gold Coast circuit.
It's an unforgiving bit of road, this Surfers Paradise track. You've got to get it just right. You can't relax. And they're that's a bit more relaxing there from Barnes. I mean, the other guys are just sort of taking a little bit easier, but I suppose he figures you can't get me.
I was about to say, Peter, they have been a little conservative in that respect. They haven't been thumping the race cars over the curbs and using all of the ripple strips and what have you, as we saw you guys doing.
Yeah, no, we give it heaps because it's fractions of a second. But look, it's very, very close here now. Bailey's got a sniff.
He certainly has. Only a couple of corners now to negotiate. Smith, the race leader, clinging to a very slender lead as Bailey gives it his best shot inside the last corner now, back onto the main straight. This is the last chance for Bailey in second spot. I think Smith is going to be too hard to catch inside the distance. Down he comes for the final time. They'll be happy about that. Checkered flag on display. And it's Brian Smith who takes it. A terrific drive. Kerry Bailey certainly hounded him right throughout the last few laps of that one, but just couldn't get close enough. He was finishing second, and that's where he ended up. And obviously Jeff Barnes in third. Also a very good drive as they go past poor old Des Wall, still stranded on the racetrack. Bob Jolly ultimately finishing in fourth spot.
Well, mate, Bob Jolly, it's great to see Bob out there. He's a bit of a battler, and he's doing fantastic getting out there. Good on him.
He's been around for a while, Bob Jolly. In fact, he won an event here last year as well. Brian Smith was one of the winners last year. That man on screen, Bob Jolly, also emerged victorious in one of these events. And we recap them for you. The man that obviously took the checkered flag after a very good drive indeed. In the Alfetta GTV was, of course, Brian Smith from Western Australia, car number 5. Kerry Bailey, the Tasmanian, in car number 1, finishing second. Jeff Barnes in 6, finishing third. Bob Jolly, the wily old veteran, car number 3, finishing 4th. Spadiris in 29, finishing 5th. And Whincup in car number 8, finishing 6th, Peter.
Graham Whincup, a bit of history in that car too, I can tell you. That's a Chevy Monza, and that's a car that Alan Jones and I were once going to race in I think it was a 1,000-kilometre race or whatever in Florida in 1982 or 3 or sometime like that. We actually tested the car and we almost got the deal together.
It didn't eventuate for you. Brian Smith on his cool down lap Arms out the window, plenty of nice applause coming from the crowd. They did a good job, the top three guys. The event was ran fairly cleanly. We'll take a break from surfers and come back with more.